Can our friends make us or break us? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Truth Culture. With us today is the author of Be My Friend, Freddie Anderson, director of Huntsville Institutional Ministry. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I believe this is a very important topic, one that we don't think about very often, but it seems to be one of the most important things that we can discuss. And my first question for you today is, why is having the right friendships in our lives so important?
Friendships, because it is one of the most important decisions that a person will make for their life, because the average person doesn't understand that he or she placed their lives in the hands of their friends. And so this is why it's an important decision. I've known situations where a person has a friend and a friend has a conflict or a beef with someone else. And the friend is an innocent person, and the friend end up losing their lives because of the person that they chose as their friends. And so friendships are one of the most important decisions that a person can make. Another thing too is that God has given us the innocence of friendship to learn how to be good men, good husbands, good neighbors, good employees, good servants. And so these are the reasons why friendships are so very important.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me when I was in high school, one of the men who helped out with youth ministry had a brother, and he just went on a ride with his friends, and it was a drive-by.
Yeah.
And he was in the car and they got caught. And because he was in the car, not participating in it, he went to jail.
Yeah.
And it completely devastated the family for years.
Well, that's why you step out the home and you step into the life of your friend. And if your friend has a hidden life, then you are brought into that situation. And my book is filled with stories about individuals who made poor choices in the friends that they had.
Yeah.
And there's the story of Vic, whose friends one day wanted to go to the store. And so they rolled up, say, "Hey, you want to go to the store with us?" Vic said, "Yeah, I'll ride." Well, Vic didn't have any money, but was going to the store with them. And then he's in the store, standing by the door, and he's in the middle of a robbery.
Yeah.
One of the friends decided to rob the store. Vic says, "Well, I didn't want to, step out the store for my friends to think I wasn't down with them." And then he ended up getting convicted for a robbery that he didn't benefit from, and he had no part in because of who he chose to be his friend.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And, from a Christian perspective, I know a conversation that comes up a lot is, should our friends only be Christian?
We don't live in a world where you can only have Christians as friends.
Yeah.
And even if we live in a world where the only way that you can exercise influence over another person is to have a relationship with them. That book is basically a mirror of the friendship that I have with my friend from Louisiana, a guy named Pascal Mitchell. And he and I met officially when we were freshmen in college, and today we are just fast friends. And he subsequently became a believer, after I became a believer, and that's one of the things that you want to grow out of your friendship. And tell you the real genesis of the book. I was doing a youth seminar. And I called a friend of mine, preacher friend, said, "Well, is there a good book that I could use for this youth seminar?" He says, I can't think of anything. Then I called another friend, and they didn't know anything. But I knew that there was a friendship in the Bible that could be used as a template for good friendship, and that's the friendship of Jonathan and David.
Yeah.
And so I basically went in there and I saw the attributes of the friendship of Jonathan and David, and I used that to make the book. Loyal, they guarded, loving, sacrificing, and those are the attributes of what a real friend is.
Yeah. Well, what are the common mistakes you think that most people make when selecting their friends?
They the one thing about friendship that is most vital is this, and it helps us to understand the mistake that people make in who they choose to be the friend, is that friends always do what's in the best interest of the other. And the most common mistake that people make in choosing friends is that they want friends that go along with everything that they do. You're not my friend if you don't do what I ask you to do. If you're not my friend if you don't do. Sometimes it takes a real friend to tell you no. And many times it takes a real friend to say, this is not in your best interest. And so what I'm going to do whatever is in your best interest, even if it means telling you no, telling you, man, don't do that. But that is the one thing we gotta always keep in mind. Friends do what's in the best interest of their friend. And that's what you had with David and Jonathan. Jonathan knew that David was going to be the king. Jonathan tells David, you're going to be the king one day, but I want you to remember my family. And Jonathan gave David his coat. He gave David his ring. He gave David all of those things that made him the heir apparent to the throne, because he did what was in the best interest of his, and he was protective of David too. So we make critical mistakes. When the most critical mistake that people make in selecting friends, they want somebody to simply go along with them. That's not a good friend.
So in other words, we tend to choose people that affirm our current lifestyle.
Indeed.
And then we support their lifestyle because it's like ours.
Yeah.
And so essentially we choose friends that kind of keep us at the same place.
Indeed. And that's not a real friend.
Yeah.
My friend in the book, Pascal, it's nothing more in life. We were freshmen together, and we played on the freshman basketball team. And then the next year we got a new coach, and Pascal stayed on the JV, and I went to the varsity. The next year I went to the varsity. They kept him on the JV, but there was nothing more that my friend wanted than to be a good basketball player. And so what I did what was in his best interest. We used to break into the gym and pound that basketball. We would play basketball with the lights out because that's what my friend, my ticket was punched. I was going to go to college on a track scholarship, but he wanted to play basketball, and that's what we do. You don't want a friend that rubber stamps your bad conduct. You want a friend that said, man, no, that's not the right thing to do. That's not good. Because if you want to go to college to play basketball, this is what is in your best interest. And so that's important.
Yeah. Well, I think, a lot of people feel like, well, our friends just kind of come as they are randomly. Maybe it's a person who we have to sit next to in school. Yeah. Or but there's actually an ability to choose who our friends are. And the next question I want to ask you is how can we be deliberate and choosing our friends?
What we have to have a criteria as far as what do we want in a friend, okay? And not only that, but the other person has to have an idea what they want in a friend too. And any friend that you have ever had, your name was hyphenated with their names. Like my friend Cam. So it is Freddie and Cam, or Cam and Freddie. And there's a tradition, of course, in the Hispanic culture that they have a hyphenated last name. Your name will always be hyphenated by that person. So when I go home to Louisiana, and people always asking about my friend, because our names are always hyphenated because we are such good friends. So what do we want to find in a friend? We want to find a friend that makes us and doesn't break us. We want to find a friend that Proverbs chapter 27, and that's really the theme verse of the book. As iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen the countenance of his friend. And you want a friend that sharpens you and not one that dulls you. Yeah. And that's something that you want to kind of project. Can this person sharpen me, and can I sharpen this person? Even if he or she may not be where I am at that point, but I will help them to get to that point, or they will help me to get to that point too. So iron sharpens iron. So does one man sharpen the countenance of his friend.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. Where do you think, how do you think people learn how to choose friends normally? Because obviously what you're talking about and what you discuss in your book is a deliberate approach in selecting your friendships, because if you choose the wrong friends in your life, you're setting yourself up for some bad times ahead of you.
Yeah.
But where do you think most people get their concept of choosing friends?
The one thing I said in the book, you can't choose your brother.
Mm-hmm.
You can't choose your sister.
Yeah.
But you can choose your friend.
Mm.
And so I have nothing to do with my two brothers. I have nothing to do with my two sisters being a part of this family system. But I have a say in who my friends are. I illustrate in the book a series of circles, and the smaller circle is my family and my friend. The bigger circle are people that I associate with. They might be in class with me, but they don't necessarily have to be my friends. The bigger circle are just people in the whole world, but my smaller circle is the circle that really defines me. So how do I pick and choose? How do I say that this person will make a good friend or that person will make a good friend? It's how they treat themselves. And so if you treat yourself with respect, if you treat yourself with decency, if you have something that you're trying to get in life, we're going in the same direction. And if we're going in the same direction, then we'll arrive at the same point, maybe not at the same time, but we'll arrive at the same point at some point in life.
Yeah.
Friends are just that important. In Acts chapter 15, and really Acts chapter 11, you have a coming out for the Apostle Paul. But Paul had a friend, his name was Barnabas.
Yep.
You know, when Paul and Barnabas comes on the scene, Paul is not the person who is the front person. It is Barnabas and Paul. But later on, as Paul gained prominence, it became Paul and Barnabas. That's how friendships are. It is, we become simpatico. We become just like David and Jonathan. It says in 1 Samuel chapter 18, that the soul of Jonathan and David were knit together. And that's how that's the kind of friendship you want to have, where your souls are knit together. That's the guys who wrote the hits for Janet Jackson and who did Bobby Brown, and those two guys, one of the guys was having an interview, and he said the first time that he saw Terry Lewis, he said, I loved him when the first time that I saw him. That's how friends are. Another attribute of friendship is that it has to be loving.
Yeah.
Loving, loyal, protective, giving. And those are the things that you find in a real friendship. And there are toxic friendships also. Maybe we'll talk about those, but there are some.
Speaking of which, I want to ask the final question here. So let's say you have friends that are toxic.
Yes.
And they're leading you down the wrong path.
Yes.
How do you separate yourself from those relationships?
One thing that you want to do is that you don't necessarily want to give up. You don't want to give up on a friend. You want to be there for that friend, and the friendship will change according to the conduct of the friend. Psalms 1, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful. Those are three aspects of friendship. That when you walk with them, you participate with them. When you stand with them, you identify with them. And then when you sit with them, you associate with them. So this is how we have our friendships. So when you're in a toxic friendship, you don't participate in what they are doing, because you're only making the situation worse. and you encouraging conduct that is destructive to that individual and not very helpful in their relationship. Final thought on this is it is good training grounds for me to be if I'm not a good friend, I'm probably not going to be a good husband. And when I share copies of my book, and I want parents to read it, and when adults read my book, they see where the problems are in their relationships even right now because they didn't practice well on those innocent relationships on friends. So they didn't know how to be loving because they were not loving with their friends, protective, giving, and those kinds of things. That's because they didn't practice well. And that's why the book is so, I'm not selling the book or touting the book or promoting the book, but I'm simply referencing the book. Not me, but 1 Samuel chapter 18, chapter 19, chapter 20, the friendship between Jonathan and David is there.
Yeah.
And we can go and read about it.
Well, I know just in the first chapter of Proverbs, it talks about watch out for your friends because they can lead you down even and the dangerous roads, murder and blood. And before the show we were talking about some statistics on prisons.
Yes.
And it was shocking because can you repeat the percentage of how many men are in prison compared to women?
In the state of Texas, for example, there are 162,000 people locked up in the state's prison. Not the federal nor the private prison, but just the state prisons. And of those 162,000, about 85% of them are males. And not a single man that is locked up in Texas's prison is locked up by himself. Now, what I mean is this, is that it is probably a friend that is associated with him being locked up in prison.
Wow.
And that's not good because they didn't do well in who they chose to be a friend. Another guy that I referenced in the book, his name is Brent. Brent went to prison when he was 18 years old. He became a man in prison. And what Brent ended up spending 30 years in prison because when he was in prison, he got other friends that were destructive and that were not any good. And he picked up other cases in prison, and he stayed in prison 30 years.
Wow.
He went to prison because of a friend. He and a friend went robbed the family store. And he thought it was cool because the friend say, I know when they make the deposits and everything. And when they robbed this store, his family store, the friend told on Brent. There's another story in the book, if we have time. This guy's name is Earl. He and a friend went out wilding one night. They went out to a place where they were shooting turtles and snakes and frogs, and they wanted to do a mock robbery on the couple that was parked. Well, they went and they pulled a gun on the couple, and the girl in the vehicle went to school with this guy. And it went from being a mock robbery to a double murder.
Wow.
And the guy that was with Earl, he went and told. Earl thought he was his friend. Whoever tells first is usually the one that's going to be believed. And Earl was executed.
Wow.
A visit with Earl. And Earl is the first statement in the book. He said, this is no way to die.
Wow.
Because of a friend. And that's why your opening statement was so important about friends that make us and break us.
Wow. I just never even stopped to think about how the people who are in prison today is often because of who they associate with.
Yes.
And that is a true reality. And we're even warned about it in the Bible.
Indeed.
And because God wants us to know it's important who we associate with.
It's absolutely important.
Yeah.
Absolutely important.
Well, thank you, Freddie. You've given us a lot of good stuff to think on.
Well, you're so kind. Thank you for interviewing.
And it's been a pleasure. And for those of you watching the show, I hope you meditate and you think on these things and explore the sections of Scripture that he mentioned, because it's in there. What our friendships are supposed to look like and the importance of our friendships in life. And if you have any comments or questions, you can leave comments below the video, or you can also email us at info@ripplelight.com. We'd love to hear from you and even discuss further some of the questions you have. Until then, God bless.